So today I want to have a chat about the Black Rose story, my soul story, what it means to tap into that gnosis, that wisdom, and bring this story alive today. And the Black Rose could mean many things to many people, so I want to start there. So initially, the black rose signifies death because it's a black rose, a dying rose as such, a dead petal. For a lot of people, it does mean death. But to me, it means much more than that. It means the possibilities of death and rebirth, reincarnation, and the idea that we of looking into the unknown mysteries. And when I was about 16 years old, I had a black rose tattooed on my shoulder. So black roses have always been prevalent in my life. At the time, I thought I was just doing it to rebel. I'd just broken up with a boyfriend for 2 years and I wanted to embrace my freedom. I wasn't allowed to have a tattoo by my dad. So I was like, I'm going to just go and do something in secret for me. But I did it because I'd seen it on an album cover, and I looked it up, and I realised that the black rose equaled death, and I wanted to have death on my shoulder all the time, so that I could live my life in a very different way to the norm. And that's what it meant to me for years and years and years. I didn't think too much about black roses. I just had it there, witnessing my life journey on my back. And then I got into writing my second play, uh, The Witch, the Bitch, the Whore Was Your Angel, which says everything about the subject matter. And I got very into the Venusian mysteries, which are mystery schools going down the sort of Egyptian lineage, but it goes older into Atlantis, Lemuria, and Venus itself, because that's where it originates from. And I will say now, I'm not massively into planetary systems, even though my body kind of syncs with them. I don't study it or have that in my repertoire of my gnosis, but I am fascinated that that the actual way Venus orbits the sun goes round in this five-petaled lotus, or what looks like a pentagram, in the dark inky sky, and that takes 8 years for it to complete its cycle. So I think that's something very important to acknowledge with Venus and the Black Rose, and where its origins come from in the idea of the star system, and us gazing up at that star from Earth and looking at that planet and thinking, okay, this looks like a black rose, and this is how I understand the world. And there's a lot that sort of influences with the occult when it comes to Black Rose. It's been intercepted a lot and related with black magic, darker magic practices. But also, Black Rose, many movements have used it as a way of anarchy and rebellion against the system. So there's a lot in that that's very rife in the way that I use the Black Rose and bring it to the forefront, because as beautiful as Venus may have been, and as beautiful as a black rose is, as with everything today, I believe we're in spiritual warfare. So actually, everything's been infiltrated, reprogrammed, used for a dark agenda, used for black magic. All of those have been infiltrating into our systems. So why I feel that it's so vital and important to bring the true Black Rose lineage back is because for me it was a space of coming home to the real magic and the mystery that's available, the real true occult that the witches and the shamans and the Knights Templars held in their hands. Much older, right through the ancient Egyptian temples, this kind of magic and mystery and reverence for everything that is, the whole system, and also an earth based human culture of love and reverence and unity, which is so very important, I feel, to reinstall on our planet again at these times. But me personally, I kind of stumbled upon the Black Rose when I was studying for my second play. And I was looking into rose lineage initiations, and I stumbled upon one that was being run for Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. And I had a beautiful channeling in that experience by a woman called Sharon Prince. And as I was sitting there waiting to see what this initiation was, I actually heard in my ears ringing, black rose, black rose, black rose. And I just didn't really understand what that was at the time. And I went up and she was a medium, so she read me and she said, "You've been through many rose lineages in your time, and you've made it to the black rose, which is quite a rare one." And I'd also been studying a bit of Egyptian Tantra at the time. And by studying, I say I'd done past life regressions and this Tantra had come through to me. So that was my way of studying, which is true gnosis, looking inside your soul to get your records and your wisdom back. And she also mentioned Egyptian Tantra, which I hadn't heard before. And that led an unfurling of realizing that the Black Rose Mysteries were about this kind of Egyptian Tantra meeting of the masculine and feminine energies and uniting. Some might know it as the black and the golden serpent. If you've seen any kind of Egyptian teachings, or Kundalini energy, the yin and the yang. And so it led me on to thinking and seeing how distorted that has become, because when I typed in Black Rose, for example, Black Rose, to see what was out there, I actually found the Black Rose sequence, which is actually put out there as a means of mind control and enslavement for women. And at that point, I really realized that actually these teachings, my teachings from my soul, have been so thrown away, put under cover, used as dark manipulation. And it's got to come back into the rightful hands. And I think that's why it's such an important time to step up now and step into your gnosis and your wisdom and your soul's history. And I feel that that's so important because many of us know that our origin stories have been stolen and regurgitated by those who won the wars, and changed and distorted, and people that were truthers have had their wisdom taken away. The witches had their bodies burnt. The knights were killed on the battlefield. The all sorts of people that tried to carry these teachings forward got them intercepted, buried, and stolen or persecuted in many, many ways. That's littered throughout our history. And what most people will find, those soul storytellers, those old souls, those light warriors of today, of which I speak to many that resonate with my work, will want to bring back those truths and bring back that knowing and step back into their origin roots, so that they can really realize that actually I'm here today on this earth to do something quite huge on my soul mission. And that is what the gift of the Black Rose is giving. It's not saying that spirituality is all love and light. It's not saying it isn't a traumatic timeline, reclaiming our truths, because to reclaim our truth, we have to really stare down the barrel of the gun and go, what has been done to humanity? But I probably speak for a lot of us that go, actually, it's never made sense what's been done to humanity. It's never come from a soul place, a spiritual place. It's never come from the true teachings, the Gnostics, the wisdom keepers. They didn't say fight each other, kill each other, sacrifice each other. They didn't want to sacrifice the human spirit at all. Having the spirit of the human in reverence is the greatest honor being spiritual or soulful has for you. So I wanted to also talk about it a little bit in a wheel-like fashion, because I'm running the Black Rose course in a week's time, and it's following a little bit of a cycle. There's certain feminine archetypes that we're following, and it's going through a bit of a spiritual transgression and journey, because I feel a lot what's not done is that when you become spiritual, more tapped in with your soul and your gnosis, there's no set path, and it can be quite a scary, enlivening, beautiful time, but it can be quite isolating. And having been through that sort of cycle and wheel for myself for the past sort of 7 years, I felt like it was time to kind of bring these teachings forward and gather more in community and help each other to uprise, bring those gifts home, and speak, most importantly, our spiritual truths. So I've pulled a few cards, so I'm going to start with the first one, which is Sophia. See, she's the first priestess we were going to be working with, but also the card that I pulled is the Two of Swords. And swords comes up a lot in my teachings. And I feel like this is, and I don't know if you can see it very well, but she's also blindfolded. And this is kind of the first stage of spiritual awakening that many people have been on. When you first have that wake up call to spirit, you might have lived your life uh, probably being a little bit soulless, a bit dead inside, not even speaking to anyone about soul or spirit or magic, and you're just kind of there in your 9 to 5 humdrum, living your life, deadened to what really is the rebirth process. And then something happens to you, and for me, I finally got onto my path of what I was doing here. I kind of faced my first sort of dark night of the soul, kind of retrained and moved into a career that was more of my soul's calling. And in that moment, spirit stepped in hugely when I saw the spirit of my nan come into the room, and she'd passed on in spirit. And she told me not to be so afraid. So my first words were on the big spiritual journey was don't be so afraid. And I think conquering that fear in us is probably the first call in. It's going into stepping into what you really want to do. And that is terrifying. Stepping into the listenings of the soul that's been like knocking and whispering and cajoling you along and saying, do it. We're here. And then the minute that you do, you get that beautiful response like I did, don't be so afraid. And I promise you, spirit always steps in, your soul always steps in and supports you, nourishes you, encourages you when you make the first step on your spiritual journey. So this is also overlighted on a course in week 1 by Sophia. And Sophia is the teachings of the true Gnostic teachings. And Sophia herself couldn't have gone through a darker night of the soul if she tried. The myths say that she had to fight the demons. Some say that she gave birth to the first demons, the first, let's call them soulless race. There's many different ideas on this, and I'm going to go into this more in detail, and also call everybody that is there for this course to actually look at what their own soul is saying on Sophia and really channel what's been said inside, because although our history is written out there in books and media and newspapers, and it goes on and on and on, our true stories are written inside our souls, or locked inside our Akashic records, or written on the stones, or buried in the earth. And I think that's the place to find the true wisdom, as much as what's out there is important. And it's a lot of it can ignite your truth, but then it gets to a point, especially with the feminine mysteries, to go within and look there and take a less sort of logical, left brain way of accessing this, because we've lived in that way for eons. So much as you can trust that something more is coming through to be awakened. And that's for everybody, male, female, to touch into that feminine gnosis, that wisdom of Sophia. And then we go on to the initiation, and I picked the Eight of Swords. And as you can see, she's not only blindfolded, but she's in the middle of a ring of swords. And that's quite a sort of a terrifying notion, if you like. But I also believe that this is the point where we get to where we've just sort of launched ourselves off into the unknown, and then we've found loads of lessons and initiations and teachings, and we've been quite ignited. So even though we might be going in on blind faith that it's all going to be okay, that we're going to find what we need to find, often mentors, teachers, friends step in and help us out. It is unknown territory. So we're feeling around, trying to learn our spiritual gnosis, having this awakening. Some points it's exhilarating because you've let spirit and soul back into your life. So it's like, wow. And I know I had this journey big when I first started writing my own play called Awaken, and I was literally going through the awakening process as I was writing it, and it felt magical and terrifying, and it was way bigger than I expected because it was part of my soul's purpose. But at that point, I thought, oh, I'll just write a play and then I'll move on with my life. And spirit and soul call you on to a much bigger journey than that. So I think that's why it's also blind faith and terrifying. And at this point, which is week 2 on the Black Rose course, I'm calling in Hathor to work with us. Now, all of these feminine archetypes, these goddesses, these heroines that lead the way, the feminine energy, have shadow forces, which is just as important to acknowledge. But I also want to take us back to their true wisdom teachings, and Hathor is a brilliant overlighter of community and business and 5D thinking and more magical quantum realities, because when she ruled in Egypt, she was ruling with fair divine consciousness, and it's a hell of a long way we've fallen since that kind of consciousness. So to awaken that in yourself and live in that way, I find Hathor overlights my theatre, my 5D theatre now, because I'm always trying to feel into what would be the more magical, the spiritual, the soulful way to lead a business today, so that I can align with the 5D earth that's coming in, so I can help bring it in. And do you want to say anything more about how? So yeah, I think along those timelines, especially in Egypt, it's worth mentioning that there was a lot of trauma. I mean, there was a cataclysm that took place in Egypt, which is why I focus on this time in my soul lineage particularly, because you tend to find a lot of souls have incarnated there because it was a spiritually intense, prolific time, but then it was also very infiltrated and magic was stolen and taken. So there's a lot of past life pain that can come up, but a lot of real spiritual truth and wisdom. So it's worth kind of feeling into those both. And on that, we go to week 3, which is Isis. And as you can see here, this is like 3 women gathering in beautiful flowers, in colour and in ceremony. And I think that's the thing to awaken. I know for me, when I started to come together in collaborations on my spiritual journey, meet my sisters, my soul tribe, even my soul brothers, but I'm also very in sync with the power of 3, which is quite a big occult meaning, but something I very align myself with. You might know it more as the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, which I believe is part of the dark programming, because actually that's all the masculine archetypes. Where's the feminine? That's a program in itself. But the Holy Trinity is a very important aspect of your spiritual journey and the Black Rose path. And I think Isis in particular, because she's a high priestess of magic, so it's very important to souls and witches and high priestesses and magicians and wizards, because she was the origin of that. But also a part when her divine counterpart was torn to pieces, if you know the myth of Osiris. So it's a very important stage to go into and look at the mythology of her, but also reclaim your own magic, because that's a huge part of a Black Rose priestess path, stepping into your magic, which doesn't look like anybody else's, and bringing that into your life, because our life should be fueled with magic. It really should be. It's not a case of just for the some, and many are using it to have control over, and that's part of the dark agenda magic. It's really important to be able to witness it, because magic is involved in spells, casting spells that you can't necessarily see. So you need to learn that language so that you can actually step into the magician's role and master your own magic with your own healing hands and use it for healing, not harming, which is something I'm very particular on. And talking of harm, then we move into the King of Cups. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, And this is the patriarchal program set on his throne. And although, yes, I love a divine masculine king, we haven't had one of those for a long, long time. And this brooding image is very foreboding of the time that we've been into the patriarchal program, where the feminine spirit, the soul, the essence of spirituality was just completely lost. And although it's very much returning today, there's a carefulness, a warning that we need to be careful that we don't revolt it and push over a patriarchal program with a feminine force that doesn't put them into balance. And I really understand this one, because when you realize you've been repressed in any way, as a female, as a race, all of it lives inside the human spirit, then you want to push back and push against. And in some ways, can be a tendency to dominate or to push away and separate. And the Black Rose teaching is really about coming together and joining in union rather than pushing away, because the human spirit needs to come together as one, because that's how it's controlled. If we fall apart and we get arguments and conflicts and wars and battles, then we're just going to have the same things play out, play out, play out. Yes, if we come together and support and ignite and tell the truth and walk out bravely with courage and our gnosis and our magic and our wisdom and our soul path, then we conquer the conquerors and we conquer ourselves and our initiation path. So it's huge, but on that journey, I will say, usually comes, and we probably all had it in our own spiritual journey, the dark night of the soul, where you completely question everything that you're doing, question everything you believe in. Or for me, when my second big dark night of the soul came, it was when I questioned society. And suddenly I looked at this programming we were living under that didn't seem to support the human spirit. And it broke my heart, because like many rose priestesses or feminine spirits of the divine, or spiritual seekers, we want to see the best in people. We want to trust. We're empaths, we're lover archetypes, so we want to see that people come from the same unique soul template. And it's a very hard realization that some people don't have souls, or they've sold their souls down the river, or have become so corrupted that they've fallen so far away from the true teachings and spirit and humanity and love and unity consciousness. And so this was a big fall from grace for me, and this is quite a tough path. And that's one of the biggest reasons I got a spiritual whoop-ass to teach the Black Rose, to bring people together, to hold space and support the dark path, because the Black Rose is also the most powerful, which is why it's been infiltrated so much, because it's a sort of path of spirituality that you get to nearer the end, when you've had your awakening and you're looking at the world with true clear eyes, and you're here to make a change and to do something really brave and different, and to retrain the human mind, to give life back to the human body, and to bring soul's consciousness into everything that you do. But that does mean you have to understand what soul loss is, to align with that. And so, of course, the archetype and the feminine spirit that overlights this is Mary Magdalene, who has been one of the greatest teachers of that path of pain and distortion and pushing out of a knowing and a space holding. And for me, Mary Magdalene is one of the most amazing healers, because she can hold space for grief and pain of what people have been through. I mean, she was the counterpart to Yeshua. She put him through the rebirth and resurrection process. She's not acknowledged for hardly anything she's done, and labeled as a whore for many centuries. Yet she is the counterbalance to Jesus, and she's just as powerful and just as prolific, and actually an amazing space holder like the feminine is, that actually she doesn't need to do much and healing occurs. So, yes, she's overlighting our dark night of the soul. And then we go into where we are, week 5, which I've got the 7 of Swords. You can see this rather jolly man, but more importantly, he's got swords in his bag, so he's ready. He's ready to go on his journey, to go on a new battle. A new day has dawned. And this, for me, is when we've looked at quite a few of our past timelines. Wow, I've seen and worked with many about soul loss, soul retrieval, dark magic, witch persecution, persecuting witches, mind control templates, dark technologies. I've seen a lot of different stuff working with myself, my own soul, and other people's. And I feel like when you have incorporated quite a few of this, or you have a knowing of this, it's what to do next. It's like taking your sword of truth, your battle scars, and going forward. And for this reason, week 5's overlighted by Sarah. And Sarah is such an unknown priestess on the path. She's the daughter of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, if you believe they had a child. She's also the patron saint of gypsies, the gypsy witch archetype. She can also be Sarah Lakari. I feel into her in 3 different ways and find that quite powerful because she's a very hidden, repressed, not looked at archetype, and actually she is a freedom seeker, as more will be revealed on that path. Talking of freedom speakers, now let's go to week 7, which is the 2 of Wands. And you'll see that we're seeing something from behind here. So it's like a new day has arisen, but it's all from looking over the shoulder of it. So for me, this is a really clear look at the past with a whole new level of eyes. So I've chosen this to be the week that we finally get to Lilith on the path. And Lilith to me means so many things, but she's a real dark goddess because she's the woman that was cast out of Eden, let's say. She was also a woman that knew all the names of gods, so she was quite spiritually advanced. She wouldn't submit to man who was beneath her. And she was also cast with loads of demons, and a lot of people, magicians on the darker paths, do use her in not very divine ways. So she's very involved in the demonology of the occult. So that's why I save working with her until we've been through a few initiations, because she brings up a lot. But she also brings up the spirit of something I talk about, not in my name. So not what isn't acceptable in the name of Lilith, because she's coming back to be a force of power and the powerful of the good of all. So yeah, I feel like that this is a real spiritual activism as part of the Black Rose path. It is that anarchy and that push against the systems that don't work. She's breaking apart the good girl, which is represented by Eve, and bringing in the bad girl revolution, but a revolution for the greater good of all, which is what all revolutions are about. It's about bringing in the new, but being active in that process. And then we reach our final week in the Black Rose course and story, which is the 4 of Swords. There we go. And yeah, so this woman's very interesting. She's very ready for what's to come. And she's got her sword of truth, and she's gone through her wisdom. And at this part, we're going back into union of the masculine and the feminine. And we're repairing wounds, because you don't go on that fierce feminine path of the feminine spirit and pull up all of those different timelines and everything that we've been through in a patriarchal program and distortions, and come out of it not a different person. You come out of it having seen your battle scars, having been world weary, but also knowing clearly how to protect yourself and how to look with courage at anything that you didn't see before that was slightly distorted. both in yourself, but also outside in society that doesn't work, so that you can't be programmed. You can't put the veil back over. You're wide awake and looking at the world, and you've got your gnosis activated in your soul, which is a great time to come into balance with the divine masculine and move forward in your purpose, which will lead you back round to the eighth wheel of the Venusian rose, right back to the start and the cycle. So, yeah, that's a lie. But yeah, that really felt like it needed to come out today, that kind of gnosis of what it's all about. And to conclude, to say that really my urge and my wish for everyone right now is to come back to their own soul story, to figure out their origin roots so that they can come home and also set a path ablaze with more freedom and courage and revolutionary spirit to bring in this new earth, this new energy, these higher light beings that we're becoming by being warriors of light. And so that's not soft or spiritually bypassing or saying just sit and hope that you'll just receive loads of things. That's why it's a fierce feminine path. It's saying, no, you've become the one that you've been waiting for. You've got your sword ready and you're ready to dash through, set a torchlight in the dark night of the soul. You're ready to really face your spiritual truth and you're ready to speak it in every way that you work, whether that would be like me, like as a storyteller, or an oracle, or a healer, or in your business, or in the way that you practice day to day, so that we can all be much more aligned with our soul and listen to the real truth and the wisdom and the urge that it's saying, please connect with me, heal all my fragments, call me home, and let me work with you to be a warrior of the light. Yeah. So if that calls to you, I'm going to put a link in the description for Seven Witch course, which starts on the 23rd, which is a new moon, I believe. And it's going to be powerful and activating. So it's calling people that are ready for that big activation. You can always get in touch with me if you want to know a bit more information. There's a lot on the course page, but also if you want to sort of chat through, whether you're ready or whether it's a right fit, by all means, my email's on the website as well. Other than that, if you're going through your own spiritual journey by yourself or with others, know that there's so many of us and that we're each holding hands and sending out light to everyone that's being activated or doing amazing things to bring in more of this higher consciousness into the air. So I thank you for everything that you're doing, and I hope that you don't feel alone in your work.